Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am so stoked to dive into this one with you today because we're looking at a story that completely flips the script on the biggest sporting event on Earth. Picture this for a second. A massive football fan saves up their hard-earned money for years. They fly all the way across the globe, landing in America for the World Cup of a lifetime. The excitement is absolutely electric. But then, they discover a totally shocking reality. So I gotta ask you, what do you think is actually the hardest part of that ultimate World Cup journey? You might immediately think it's navigating the whole complex visa process, right? Or maybe stomaching those astronomically high ticket prices. Or, just surviving a grueling 15-hour flight wedged in a middle seat. Well, you'd be wrong. It's literally none of those things. The absolute hardest part is the final 10 miles, specifically those last 10 miles between a fan's hotel and the stadium. Just imagine it. You land at the airport, ticket in hand, buzzing for the match you've dreamed about since you were a kid. You pull out your phone, pull up your map, and your jaw just hits the floor. There are no trains, there are no direct buses, and if you think, hey, I'll just hoof it, you quickly find out there's no walking path that isn't completely blocked by a massive multi-lane highway. Your only real choices are a surge-priced rideshare that costs more than your actual match ticket or some shuttle you were somehow supposed to book weeks in advance. Okay, let's really dive into this. 400,000. That is the population of Arlington, Texas, which happens to be the home of the sprawling AT&T Stadium. Now, that stadium is a total crown jewel venue. It's hosting 9 World Cup matches, including some of the absolute biggest games of the tournament. But here's the wild part. Arlington is the largest city in all of North America with 0 fixed-route public transit. None. Not a single bus line running on a reliable, fixed schedule. So what happens to a fan who shows up without a rental car? Well, they're forced into this grueling, multi-step journey. They have to connect through a regional station, wait around for a specialized shuttle bus, and then walk this incredibly long final stretch to the gates, all while baking in the sweltering heat of a Texas summer.
And it gets even crazier when we look at the biggest match of the whole shebang, the World Cup final at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. First off, there's 0 general spectator parking, none at all. Second, the only realistic option was a train system where ticket prices surged so insanely high during peak demand that massive public backlash actually forced them to reverse the pricing. And third, if you wanted to walk, well, a reporter at The Guardian actually put this to the test, trying to walk from Manhattan to the stadium. 4.5 hours into the trek, the route was physically blocked. Turns out, pedestrians were never meant to make that walk because the city's infrastructure simply wasn't built for it.
And, this perfectly illustrates that this whole situation isn't just bad luck. It's not just a couple of unprepared host cities dropping the ball. The American Society of Civil Engineers actually grades the nation's infrastructure. And overall, the U.S. gets a C. But for public transit specifically, it gets a flat D. That is an official engineering assessment released before the tournament even started. The reality is, most American cities were just never built to move massive crowds of people without cars. They were designed around sprawling highways and giant parking lots.
But if you're an international fan, this is just totally alien. Look at the recent history of the tournament. In South Africa back in 2010, ticket holders rode the national rail system for free. In Russia in 2018, fans rode trains between host cities for free. In Qatar in 2022, all 8 stadiums were within 35 miles of each other, brilliantly connected by a brand new metro system. For global fans, arriving at a stadium involves one simple, deeply ingrained habit. You just follow the signs to the train platform. The contrast is absolutely stark when you compare physical stadium footprints. Take Berlin's Olympiastadion, built for the 2006 World Cup. It holds nearly 75,000 fans, yet it has just 630 parking spaces. Why? Because a train line right next door moves 40,000 people an hour. A new train arrives literally every 2 minutes, and the whole stadium empties in under 2 hours. Now compare that to Gillette Stadium outside Boston. It holds 10,000 fewer fans than Berlin, but has over 23,000 parking spaces. And yet, concertgoers there routinely sit trapped in their cars, just baking in traffic for 3 hours after the final whistle.
So imagine you're a fan flying in from Munich, who grew up paying just €2 for the highly efficient U-Bahn, or a fan from Tokyo who's used to transit systems that will literally issue a formal apology if a train arrives 30 seconds late. For them, playing map app roulette in an American city isn't just about navigating a new transit system, it completely shatters their idea of what getting to a stadium is even supposed to feel like.
Which brings us to the most fascinating question of this entire explainer. What did America actually do? Faced with a D-rated transit system and only a few years to prep for millions of global visitors. Well, they did the most American thing possible. They improvised.
They basically had to invent transit on the fly. Congress threw $100 million at transit agencies hosting matches. In New Jersey, after the massive backlash over those surging train fares, organizers literally brought in yellow school buses, up to 300 of them on peak match days, shuttling fans from Manhattan out to the stadium. Just picture this, a sophisticated fan who grew up riding a sleek European subway system, squeezing into a classic, bumpy American yellow school bus to reach the World Cup final. It is surreal. Meanwhile, Kansas City tried building a transit network completely from scratch, calling it Connect KC26. But opening weekend? The asphalt at the bus staging area literally cracked under the weight of the vehicles, and multiple buses broke down mid-route. It wasn't for a lack of effort. It was a city frantically inventing a system it had never needed before.
And because of all this improvisation, you end up with these wildly split realities for the exact same commute. Look at this New Jersey setup. On one hand, you have fans taking a bumpy ride in a yellow school bus for a fraction of the rail price. And right above them in the sky, fans who could afford it were booking helicopter transfers for thousands of dollars, skipping the traffic entirely. Two completely different, highly improvised journeys to conquer the exact same 10-mile stretch.
Now, to be totally fair here, it wasn't all just chaos and cracked pavement. When real planning and funding actually came together, it worked beautifully. In Philadelphia, fans could take transit to Lincoln Financial Field for the normal, everyday fare. And a tournament sponsorship deal meant the rides home after the match were completely free. And over in Kansas City, despite that rocky opening weekend, city and state governments successfully funded a free airport-to-downtown bus service specifically for the tournament.
And pulling back from the stadiums for a second, there is a massive broader economic reality at play here. Transportation economists estimate that every $1 billion invested in public transit generates roughly $5 billion in economic return, plus tens of thousands of jobs. To put that into perspective, the World Cup didn't just expose America's transit problems. It proved, city by city, that the demand for a better system had always been there. It just hadn't been tested at this massive scale before.
Actually, let's slow down for a second, because a transportation planner who studied this whole tournament really hit the nail on the head. They said the yellow school bus wasn't really a transportation solution, it was a metaphor, a country improvising because it never built the thing it actually needed. But they also added something incredibly hopeful. They hoped this whole messy, real-time experience would leave Americans far more willing to invest in their infrastructure going forward.
Which leaves us with one massive, provocative question. What is America going to choose to build next? Because honestly, that might just be the true legacy of this World Cup. Not the shiny trophy, not the record-breaking attendance, and not even the football itself. The legacy is millions of visitors from countries that made different infrastructure choices, standing on a cracked bus platform, quietly showing an entire nation what it had chosen not to build, and much more importantly, what it could still choose to build tomorrow. This is the hidden human story behind every match that never makes the sports highlight reel. If you love discovering the real systems and stories driving our world, make sure to subscribe right now. We post new explainers like this regularly. And hey, if this changed how you'll think about getting to your next big event, share it with a friend who's already planning their trip. Thanks for learning with me today.